You ever notice how some people walk around acting like they're the main character, and the rest of us are just unpaid extras in their movie? Yeah, those people, the ones who interrupt you, roll their eyes, or treat you like your time is a charity donation. Today we're breaking down rude behaviors that scream, "I think I'm better than you," and more importantly, how to handle it like a Stoic, without losing your cool. By the way, if you enjoy deep, thought-provoking insights on Stoicism, self-improvement, and navigating life with wisdom, you'll love my free newsletter. Every Sunday, I share powerful lessons, controversial truths, and practical strategies to help you level up. All for free. Want to join? Sign up using the link below and start receiving value-packed content straight to your inbox every week. And if you're a brand looking to sponsor my content and reach a highly engaged audience, feel free to reach out via my email in the description. Let's create something impactful together. 1. Yes, one of the rudest, most backhanded behaviors people pull when they think they're better than you, downplaying your achievements. You get a promotion, and instead of saying congratulations, they hit you with, "Well, anyone could have gotten that if they worked hard enough." You save up, buy your first car, and they go, "It's just a Toyota though." You tell them you hit the gym consistently for 6 months, and they smirk. 6 months? Bro, I've been doing this for years. See, belittling isn't about your achievement. It's about their insecurity. People who can't celebrate others often see every win as a threat. Your progress makes them uncomfortable because it shines a light on their own lack of movement. Instead of clapping for you, they grab the mic to make your moment smaller. That's not humility. It's arrogance wrapped in bitterness. Now, here's where it gets controversial. If you let people shrink your victories, it's partly your fault. I know that stings, but hear me out. Because sometimes we explain, defend, or justify our wins as if we need permission to be proud. That's weakness. You don't owe anyone a TED Talk on why your progress matters. The Stoics taught us to ground ourselves in virtue, not validation, meaning if you know you've put in the work, you don't need external applause to validate your grind. I'll never forget when I bought my first car. It wasn't flashy. It was a used Nissan that rattled every time I turned the ignition. But for me, it was huge. I grew up watching my dad work 2 jobs, catching buses, hustling day and night, and that car represented independence. I was proud. I remember showing it to a friend, expecting some hype, maybe a little fist bump. Instead, he laughed and said, "Bro, this is nothing. My cousin just bought a Benz." For a split second, it stung. I felt like my win wasn't even worth sharing. But then I realized something. His reaction wasn't about my Nissan. It was about his own envy. He didn't want to celebrate me because it made him feel small. That day, I promised myself, never let another man's insecurity rob me of my joy. Because here's the deep message. When someone belittles your achievement, they're secretly admitting they don't have the courage to chase their own. It's a confession dressed as arrogance. Why is this so? Because in our society, especially as men, achievements become measuring sticks. Money, career, relationships, fitness, everything is a scoreboard. Some men can't watch another man score points without feeling like they're losing. So instead of congratulating you, they'll minimize your shot. It's their defense mechanism against facing their own stagnation. Detach from their validation. Don't look for cheerleaders in people who only know how to boo. Your inner applause matters more than their outer silence. Redirect arrogance. When someone downplays your achievement, respond calmly. "That's fine, but I'm proud of it." Simple. You don't fight arrogance with ego. You anchor yourself in peace. Clap for yourself. Journaling, reflection, or even celebrating privately keeps you grounded. You don't need to post every win or justify it to the loudest critic in the room. I once dated a woman who, whenever I hit a milestone, would always pivot the spotlight back to herself. I told her I got a raise. She'd say, "Well, my ex made double that." I hit a fitness goal. She'd reply, "Yeah, but your arms still aren't as big as so-and-so's." At first I thought maybe she was just being playful, but then I realized it was intentional. She couldn't handle celebrating me because it reminded her of her own lack of growth. And here's where most men mess up. We argue, we defend, we try to prove our achievements are worthy. Wrong move. The Stoic move is to stop seeking recognition from people who thrive on tearing you down. If someone can't celebrate you, they don't deserve access to your victories, period. Bro, your wins matter, even if they look small to others. The first dollar you make in your side hustle, the first 10 pounds you lose, the first time you say no to a toxic habit, those are battles won. Don't let anyone belittle them, because if you wait for others to validate your grind, you'll never feel satisfied. The Stoic way is this: progress is personal. No one can measure the distance you've traveled, except you. The man who belittles you today is often the man who secretly wishes he had your discipline. Remember, envy wears the mask of arrogance. So, when someone shrugs at your achievement, smile, don't clap back. Don't shrink, just know this: your victory doesn't need their applause, it's already real. 2. Ignoring your boundaries. There's a special kind of arrogance in people who ignore your no. It's the kind of rudeness that screams, "My desires are more important than your limits." And let's be honest, this happens way more than we admit. Friends who show up uninvited and eat your food. Family who think your paycheck is their emergency fund. Co-workers who dump extra work on you because you seem free. And then there's dating. Oh boy, boundaries in dating are like kryptonite to certain people. Here's the controversial truth. If someone keeps ignoring your boundaries, it's not because they don't understand them, it's because you don't enforce them. Boundaries are like fences. If you leave the gate open, don't be surprised when cows wander in. And let me tell you, some people are not cows. They're bulldozers. They'll test your limits just to see how far they can push. The Stoics were very clear about this. You can't control how others behave, but you can control what you tolerate. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Translation: people will try you, but it's on you to hold the line. Why is it so? Because respecting boundaries requires humility. It means acknowledging that someone else's time, space, and choices matter as much as yours. And arrogant people hate that. They see your boundaries as restrictions on their ego. If you say, "I can't lend you money right now," they don't hear wisdom, they hear insult. If you say, "I need space," they interpret it as rejection. That's why they bulldoze through, to reassert dominance. I'll never forget when I was younger and had this one friend. We'll call him Mike. Mike had this habit of always asking to borrow money. Not in emergencies, not because he was starving, but because he blew his cash on parties and sneakers. The first few times, I helped out, but it became routine. His poor choices became my responsibility. One day, I finally told him, "Bro, I can't keep bailing you out. I've got my own goals to save for." He laughed and said, "Man, you're acting stingy. What's $50 to you?" That was the moment I realized Mike didn't see my boundary as a limit. He saw it as an obstacle to be manipulated. At first it hurt. I thought, maybe I am being selfish. But later, I realized it wasn't selfishness. It was self-respect. If I kept giving, I wasn't helping him. I was enabling him. And worse, I was betraying myself. That's when I understood. A man who won't protect his boundaries will eventually lose his peace, his money, and his dignity. Let's be real. Telling people no feels awkward, especially for men. We're taught to be providers, protectors, yes men. But saying yes all the time makes you a doormat, not a hero. Imagine your life as a nightclub. You're the bouncer. If you let anyone walk in without checking the list, don't be shocked when your VIP lounge is filled with freeloaders, troublemakers, and that one drunk guy dancing shirtless on your table. Boundaries are the velvet rope. If you don't enforce it, your life turns into chaos. Be firm, not angry. A Stoic doesn't scream, "Don't cross me." He simply states, "This is my line." Calm, clear, unshakable. Anger gives them power. Composure takes it back. Enforce without explanation. You don't owe a 20-minute TED talk every time you say no. A short, respectful answer is enough. Overexplaining is an invitation for negotiation. Accept the fallout. Here's the tough pill. Some people will leave your life when you enforce boundaries. Good, let them. A boundary that costs you fake friends or needy users is an investment in your peace. I once dated a woman who hated the word no. If I said, "I'm busy, I'll call you later," she'd blow up my phone with 20 texts. If I said, "I don't feel like going out tonight," she'd guilt-trip me with, "Wow, you don't care about me." At first, I caved. I'd cancel plans, sacrifice sleep, bend myself into pretzels just to avoid conflict. But deep down, I felt drained, like I was losing myself just to keep her happy. Eventually, I learned love without boundaries isn't love, it's slavery. And when I finally stood firm, "No, I can't do this tonight. No, I won't be guilted," the relationship cracked. Not because I failed, but because she couldn't handle someone who valued himself enough to set limits. Bro, listen. Boundaries are not walls that keep people out. They are walls with doors that let the right people in and keep the wrong ones out. If someone ignores your boundaries, it means they don't respect you, period. And here's the kicker. People who truly value you will never test those limits repeatedly. They'll adjust, they'll honor, they'll meet you halfway. The Stoic truth is this: a man without boundaries is a man without identity. You cannot build strength, respect, or peace if you let everyone trample over your lines. The world respects men who respect themselves. So, the next time someone ignores your boundary, don't argue, don't beg. Just stand tall, repeat yourself once, and enforce. Because, at the end of the day, it's not about pushing them away. It's about pulling yourself closer to the life you actually want. 3. Talking down to service workers. Now this one gets under my skin. More than almost anything else, people who talk down to service workers. I don't care if it's the waiter at a diner, the janitor cleaning a floor, or the cashier at the grocery store. When someone treats them like they're invisible or less than human, it tells you everything you need to know about that person's character. Here's the controversial truth. If you talk down to service workers, you're not showing superiority. You're exposing your insecurity. Think about it. Nobody who's actually powerful wastes energy flexing on someone just trying to do their job. Real kings don't need to step on peasants to feel tall. It's always the fragile ones the wannabes who puff their chest at the barista because their latte had too much foam. I've always believed the way a man treats people who can do nothing for him is the truest reflection of who he is. You can act polite to your boss, laugh at your rich uncle's lame jokes, even kiss up to the girl you're trying to date. But when you snap at a taxi driver, roll your eyes at a cleaner, or bark at a waiter like you own them, that's the unfiltered you. Why is it so? Because arrogance feeds on perceived hierarchies. People who think they're better than others usually cling to status symbols, money, titles, possessions, and when they encounter someone who doesn't have those symbols, like a cashier making minimum wage, they project superiority. It's their way of saying, "See, I'm above someone." But here's the irony: the Stoics would laugh at this mindset. Epictetus, one of the great Stoic philosophers, was literally a former slave. He taught that dignity comes from virtue, not status, meaning the man mopping the floor with integrity is higher in character than the millionaire who treats others like trash. Back in college, I worked part-time at a fast food spot. Nothing glamorous, grease-stained apron, smelling like fries at the end of every shift. One night, this guy came in, clearly well off. He ordered, but when I asked him to repeat his side order, he looked at me like I was a cockroach and said, "How hard is your job? Don't they train you people? You people." That line stuck with me. Not because it hurt my ego. I knew it wasn't about me. It was about him. He needed to belittle a kid behind a counter to feel like a man. That's when I learned one of life's most valuable lessons. Status is rented, character is owned. Years later, I ran into that same man at a car dealership. This time, I was the one signing papers for a new car, and he was a salesman trying to meet his quota. He didn't recognize me, but I remembered him. And you know what? I treated him with respect. Not because he deserved it, but because I refused to let someone else's arrogance turn me bitter. That's Stoicism in action. Never letting another man's behavior dictate your virtue. Let's be real. Some guys talk down to service workers because they think it makes them look alpha. Like yelling at the waiter for forgetting ketchup somehow makes you the dominant male in the room. Bro, you're not alpha, you're just hungry and insecure. Being rude to someone who can't clap back isn't dominance, it's cowardice. I'll say it straight. If you need to flex on the waitress, you've already lost the game. A real man shows power by controlling himself, not by degrading others. Check your ego. When frustration rises, wrong order, slow service, asks, "Is this really worth my peace?" A Stoic doesn't let soup temperature dictate his mood. Practice respect universally. Treat the CEO and the cleaner with the same calm dignity. Why? Because you never lose by respecting others, but you always lose a piece of yourself when you don't. Remember perspective. That waiter you snapped at, he might be working 2 jobs to feed his family. That janitor you ignored, he might have more wisdom than your entire friend group combined. You don't know their story. Assume dignity. I once went on a date with a woman who was stunning. Sharp dresser, killer smile, the whole package. But halfway through dinner, she snapped her fingers at the waiter like he was a dog. Instant red flag. I don't care how fine you are. If you treat people like that, my respect evaporates. The date ended politely, but I knew right then. Beauty fades, character doesn't. Men, listen, if you're dating someone who talks down to service workers, pay attention. That attitude will one day be directed at you. And if you're the one doing it, fix yourself. You don't look strong, you look small. Bro, humility is not weakness. It's power under control. Talking down to someone doesn't raise your value. It exposes your emptiness. The world doesn't remember the guy who barked at the waiter. The world remembers the man who carried himself with dignity, no matter the situation. Stoicism teaches us that the only thing truly under our control is our character. And character is revealed most when you think nobody important is watching. So the next time you're tempted to snap at a cashier, pause, ask yourself, do I want to be remembered as the man who demanded respect, or the man who gave it freely? Because here's the truth. The most powerful men I've ever met didn't need to belittle anyone. They commanded respect by showing respect. And that, my friend, is the ultimate flex. 4. Overcorrecting grammar or words. Now this one is sneaky, but oh so common. The grammar police. You know the type, the person who just can't resist correcting you mid-sentence when you slip up. You say me and him went to the store, and they swoop in like Batman cape flying. Actually, it's he and I. You mispronounce a word espresso instead of espresso, and suddenly they look at you like you've committed a war crime. Here's the controversial truth. Overcorrecting people's grammar in casual conversation is less about intelligence and more about ego. Don't get me wrong. Clear communication matters. But if someone derails the flow of human connection just to flex their vocabulary, what they're really saying is, I want you to know I'm smarter than you. That's not education. That's arrogance. Now let's be honest. We've all slipped up. We all have words we mispronounce. Regional slang that doesn't fit the dictionary, or grammar we butcher when we're excited. But here's the thing. Language exists to connect, not to impress. If someone understands you, you've already succeeded. But the overcorrector doesn't care about connection. They care about correction. They're addicted to the tiny dopamine hit of winning a conversation. Why is it so? Because arrogance thrives on superiority. And what's easier than making yourself feel superior by nitpicking how someone speaks? It requires no courage, no real effort, no actual wisdom, just a smug interruption. It's like dunking on someone in basketball when they're half your height. Sure, you scored, but what did you prove? The Stoics would laugh at this. Marcus Aurelius literally wrote in his Meditations not to waste time on trivialities. Correcting a man's grammar while ignoring the wisdom or pain behind his words is missing the entire point. It's like critiquing the paint job on a car while ignoring the fact that it's getting you where you need to go. Back in high school, I had this English teacher. Let's call him Mr. Johnson. He loved correcting people, not in a helpful way, but in a way that made you feel 2 inches tall. I once stood up during a presentation and said, irregardless, instead of regardless. The class understood what I meant, but Mr. Johnson stopped me mid-sentence, chuckled, and said in front of everyone, that's not even a word. Try again. I laughed it off, but inside I felt embarrassed. Not because I didn't know the right word, but because the focus had shifted from my message to my mistake. That's the problem with overcorrectors. They don't build you, they break you. They'd rather highlight your stumble than celebrate your stride. Fast forward years later, I was in a meeting with executives, pitching an idea. I accidentally said, data is instead of data are. One exec smirked and corrected me. I smiled and said, grammar noted, but let's get back to the $1 million idea on the table. The room laughed, and we moved forward. That's when it clicked. Never let someone's obsession with details derail your bigger picture. Let's be real, some people are grammar snobs because that's the only arena where they feel powerful. They might not be leaders, athletes, or entrepreneurs, but boy, they know where to put a semicolon, and that's fine. But when they weaponize it, it's just insecurity in disguise. Think about it. No one ever says, "Wow, he really corrected my use of your versus your. I respect him more now." No, people remember kindness, wisdom and presence, not how perfectly you conjugated verbs. Don't take the bait. When someone overcorrects you, smile. Don't get defensive. Getting angry only feeds their ego. Stay focused on substance. Redirect the conversation back to your point. Remember, ideas matter more than syntax. Correct with kindness, not condescension. If you must clarify someone's word, do it gently and in private. The goal is to build, not belittle. I once went on a date with this woman who was gorgeous and sharp, but the entire evening she kept correcting my words. I said less people instead of fewer people. Bam, correction. I said I could care less. She gave me a lecture on idioms. By the end of dinner, I didn't feel like I was on a date. I felt like I was being graded on an oral exam. And here's the kicker. She thought she was being impressive. But what she didn't realize was that the constant nitpicking drained the vibe. A connection isn't built on who's right about grammar. It's built on whether we can laugh, flow, and share. Needless to say, there wasn't a second date. Deep message for men. Bro, here's the truth. Words are tools, not trophies. Don't let anyone make you feel smaller because you didn't polish yours perfectly in the moment. The man who speaks imperfectly, but with passion, vision, and authenticity, will always outshine the man who speaks flawlessly, but emptily. And if you're the guy constantly correcting others, ask yourself, are you building people or belittling them? Because no one respects the man who hides his insecurity behind a dictionary. Respect comes from wisdom, not wordplay. The Stoic lesson is this: value essence over appearance. Judge conversations by the truth they carry, not the grammar they wear. At the end of the day, no one will remember whether you said less or fewer. They'll remember if your words sparked something real. So when someone tries to flex by overcorrecting you, stay calm, smile, keep talking, because the power was never in the correction, it's in the message you carry. 5. Overexplaining simple things. Have you ever asked a simple question and ended up in a hostage situation where someone gave you a 10-minute TED talk on common sense? You ask, "Hey, how do I reset the Wi-Fi?" And suddenly you're stuck listening to the entire history of the internet, starting from when Tim Berners-Lee created the World Wide Web. Like, bro, I just wanted the password. Here's the controversial truth. Over-explaining simple things isn't about clarity. It's about control. People who do it often assume you're too dumb, too uninformed, or too lazy to get it. They don't just want to help. They want to dominate the moment, to flex their superior knowledge. And honestly, nothing screams insecurity louder than treating every question like an exam answer. Let's keep it real. Sometimes men are the worst offenders here. You've heard of mansplaining? It's real, but not just gender-specific. Some dudes can't resist the urge to turn every interaction into a masterclass. I've been guilty of it too. And I'll admit, half the time, it wasn't about helping. It was about making myself look important. Explaining what doesn't need explaining is just ego wrapped in vocabulary. Why is it so? Because people mistake knowledge for wisdom. Anyone can memorize facts, but wisdom is knowing when to shut up. Over-explaining often comes from one of three places. Insecurity. They're terrified of being ignored, so they overcompensate with words. Arrogance. They genuinely believe you're beneath them and need their genius broken down step by step. Anxiety. Some people can't stand silence, so they fill it with unnecessary explanations. The Stoics would call this a failure of discipline. Marcus Aurelius literally warned against speaking more than necessary. Seneca said brevity is power. Over-explaining takes that power away. It drowns your message in noise. I remember one time in college, I asked a buddy for help cooking rice. Simple, just rice. And this guy, I swear, turned into Gordon Ramsay meets Socrates. He started explaining the chemical reactions of starch, the difference between parboiled and basmati, the history of rice in Asia, and how water-to-rice ratio is really a metaphor for life. By the end, I wasn't hungry anymore. I was annoyed. I didn't need a life lesson. I just needed dinner. That moment taught me something. Over-explaining kills connection. What could have been a quick laugh and a bonding moment turned into a lecture I didn't sign up for. Let's be honest. Sometimes we men do this with women, and it's a vibe killer. You're on a date, and she asks, "What do you do at work?" And instead of a straight answer, you launch into a 20-minute breakdown of systems, processes, and jargon that not even your boss cares about. Bro, she didn't ask for a PowerPoint presentation. She wanted to know you, not the user manual for your office software. Here's the truth. When you over-explain, you're not impressing anyone. You're suffocating them. Nobody leaves a conversation thinking, "Wow, he really explained that in 37 different ways. What a man." No, they're thinking, "Does this guy ever shut up?" Value brevity. If a simple answer works, give it. Save your lectures for when they're asked for. Read the room. If someone's eyes glaze over, you've lost them. Stop. Shift gears. Ask, don't assume. Before explaining in detail, ask, do you want the short version or the full story? That's respect in action. Let silence breathe. Not every gap needs to be filled with a monologue. Wisdom is often found in listening, not talking. At one of my first jobs, I had a manager who over-explained everything. Every meeting felt like he was trying to prove how smart he was. One day, he spent 15 minutes explaining how to send an email to people who had been sending emails for years. The room was polite, but everyone was silently screaming, "We get it." Later, when he asked why morale was low, people didn't say it outright, but the truth was clear. Over-explaining makes people feel undervalued. It tells them, "I don't trust your intelligence," and nothing kills respect faster than that. Listen, fellas, there's a difference between being a teacher and being a talker. A teacher empowers, a talker suffocates. Real men don't need to dominate every moment with knowledge. They know when to keep it simple, when to let others speak, and when to let silence do the talking. Over-explaining isn't strength, it's weakness disguised as wisdom. True strength is saying more with less. Think about the most respected leaders, coaches, or mentors you've had. They didn't need an essay to inspire you. Sometimes a single sentence changed your entire perspective. So, the next time you feel the urge to explain something to death, pause. Ask yourself, am I adding value, or am I feeding my ego? Because the man who knows when to stop talking is always more powerful than the man who never stops. And here's the Stoic kicker. Don't waste your breath proving how much you know. Prove your wisdom by knowing when enough is enough. So there you have it. The many little behaviors that scream, "I think I'm better than you." And the truth? People who act like that aren't actually better. They're just louder about their insecurities. Arrogance is often nothing more than a mask for fragility. The Stoics remind us of a timeless principle. Your dignity is never up for negotiation. You don't have to match someone's rudeness with rudeness. You don't have to let their condescension pollute your peace. Instead, you can rise above, laugh at the absurdity, and remember that their behavior says more about them than it ever will about you. And look, let's keep it jovial. At the end of the day, we've all been that guy at least once. Maybe you overexplained. Maybe you corrected someone's grammar. Maybe you got short with a service worker after a bad day. We're human. But growth comes from catching yourself, owning it, and leveling up. So my challenge to you is this: the next time you spot someone flexing their "I'm better than you" behavior, whether it's talking down to a cashier or giving you a lecture you didn't ask for, don't waste your energy trying to win the ego battle. Just smile, breathe, and think like a Stoic. Is this worth my peace? Spoiler alert, it never is. Because here's the deep truth. True power isn't in proving you're above others. It's in proving you're above pettiness. If this hit home, don't forget, by the way, if you enjoy deep, thought-provoking insights on Stoicism, self-improvement, and navigating life with wisdom, you'll love my free newsletter. Every Sunday, I share powerful lessons, controversial truths, and practical strategies to help you level up, all for free. Sign up using the link below and start receiving value-packed content straight to your inbox every week. And if you're a brand looking to sponsor this content and reach a highly engaged audience, my email's in the description. Let's make something impactful together. Until next time, stay strong, stay stoic, and remember, respect is the real flex.